that's what's causing this sort of battle. But how to get it back, it's really, really tricky. And I think it will start from making reasonable adjustments, things like that for the kids. And these are things that don't even need funding for, but, you know, being more flexible with the school uniforms, allowing children to come in at different times to avoid the school rush, things like that that don't need, and that's all going to be...
We've been through all of those,
Yeah, do you know what I mean? It's those are the little things that can actually make the parents feel heard, and I think that's the main thing, is that a lot of the parents want to feel listened to, and they don't.
I can empathise with that again. Does anybody else want to comment on trust quickly before we go into this part two of the question? Any additional thought? No, I mean, I think you've sort of said it pretty well there. It is and another time, I mean, you know, my youngest son's been out of mainstream for a while now, and you know, it's not so much that we lost trust with the teachers who were trying, but it's that he lost trust with the system, which was not able to accommodate some of these needs in a busy, large sort of secondary school. So it's rebuilding the kids' trust that they can be an assistant that's going to work for them, as well as the parents' trust. To be honest. So second part of the question, raising the let me get this right, floor, not lowering the ceiling, which is a good point, and that's a critique that can often, you know, get sort of measured at these measures. Anybody who wants to comment on that? Maybe Charlie.
Yeah,
first,
I
then
can
we'll
start on
that one. Yeah.
I think for me, with accountability, as a former school leader as well, I'm not here to say that we need more accountability. I think there's more than enough accountability within the system. What I think the issue is that we're not measuring the right things yet. It's very disheartening, me personally, to look at the top 500 schools and see them, the accolade that they receive for being a top 500 school, knowing that their contexts are, let's be frank, much easier to teach. And that's not a criticism of anybody, that is just a fact. Not only will they not be disadvantaged or not have sent in such high numbers, they've probably also got tutors at home and all the books that they need, and they've probably got parents that are very well educated, and so some children genuinely are just easier to make progress with. So I don't think it's about more accountability, I think it's about accountability that actually recognises the challenge that you've got. And I'm telling you now, the best teachers I've ever worked with are in the schools that have the worst reputations for outcomes, because the shift that you put in to teach those children and to actually bring education to life for them, that is magic. When I taught in a selective school, I might as well have not been there some days. Those girls were going to get on with or without me. They were going to learn. I was just an ornament some days. So I think, ultimately, you cannot be inclusive within a segregated community. Inclusion starts with admissions. We have to find ways of recognising that some schools are just up against it.
It's hard to follow that, because I wouldn't disagree with any of it. I think it's based on a false premise to talk about lowering aspiration when those aspirations are incredibly partial in what they're currently measuring. And I think the big challenge at the moment is a huge amount, not a lot, but a huge amount of the school challenge issues we've been talking about today, particularly those exacerbated by selective admissions and off-rolling, come from a point that over the last 10 years we've probably become increasingly partial, both through curriculum design and school attainment measures, in what we're actually reflecting in the outcomes we hold school leaders and young people to account for. And not only is that setting some young people up to fail, it's also not doing a very good job of ensuring we're incentivising school leaders to focus on the breadth of ways they can be bringing every young person from the point they enter that school to the best possible point of their potential arc over their time with them. That, for me, feels anything but levelling down. That is levelling up the aspirations we want every school leader to have for every young person in their wider community and their true wider community. And that feels like a very worthwhile aspiration to run at.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on levelling up, levelling down? You've gone quickly, then we'll move on to the next audience questions in a second.
In terms of that, you're not lowering the standards for those children if you adjust how P8 is calculated. It's giving them fairer, more level playing field in terms of if they can make really strong progress in fewer subjects, that's going to open doors for them. That's got to be better for those young people.
And again, from a parent standpoint, everybody has the best aspirations for their kid, whatever situation that kid's in, right? So right, other questions. We'll go and then go on. Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Francesca Snelling. I work at Bright Heart Education, which is a SEND specialist tutoring agency. In the white paper and indeed on the panel here as well, it's been wonderful. What I don't hear is any conversation around EOTAS, education other than at school. So the students we work with are students who've fallen through the system entirely. So they are not able, most of them have been to specialist schools and that hasn't worked out. They've also fallen through mainstream. And I just see the white paper now as a opportunity to look at this. I really do see it as an extremely neglected area of discourse and discussion. And really, so I guess my question is, in terms of research that you've been doing, have you touched, I know Sutton Trust has touched on this, the problem that it's only sort of middle-class families that are accessing private tutoring. It's actually not the case. Local authorities are funding these EOTAS packages. We are then under pressure to reintegrate the students from these packages from this homeschooling environment into the school. My experience of that is that doesn't always work because you also have a lot of stigmatisation, not only of the students, but also of us as private tutors, that we're somehow, we're not part of the system. So that was my sort of one question. And then following on from that, another one about reducing GCSE, in terms of these discussions around timetable reduction, which can be so significant for SEN learners. Often the students that are falling out completely are falling out because they can't just do their English and maths. So their English and maths has to be accompanied by another 5 or 6 GCSEs, and that's too overwhelming. So then that English GCSE, I teach English, that doesn't get delivered to them, and then therefore they get put down to functional skills, whereas actually on EOTAS packages they can thrive and get extremely good results if they're just able to be given a little bit of time to focus on those those core GCSEs that are so fundamentally important.
No, it's a great question. I should say our youngest, who's out of mainstream, we are on an EOTAS package now after a 15-month, thousands of pounds lawyer fight to get the HCP. Yeah. So he's on a patchwork of provision we've sort of knitted together. So it's a good question. And anybody want to jump in on that? What's good? Let's take your perspective first. Go on.
Well, that was the route that we were looking at going down before we got into the SEND school.
Yeah.
I was looking at home educating, which is the last thing I ever wanted to do after lockdown.
No,
I barely survived it.
It's a nightmare, right?
Yeah, and so we were looking at those, but like you said, I think there's a real lack of discussion around it, and I think there seems to be, that seems to be a real problem area, especially with the children's wellbeing bill as well. And a lot of parents are very, very concerned and upset about this as well, because that is sort of always been in my head and a lot of other parents' head. We can fall back on that. If our children's mental health and I know it's a bit triggering to talk about this, but if they're suicidal from being at school and things like that, then we will take them out. We will deregister them, and that is what should always be an option, I think, because school isn't for every child. And I'm not just talking about neurodivergent children here, I'm talking about all different children. It's not for everybody, and there needs to be so much in place for those children, because they still can have the opportunity to do GCSEs, like you said. They can get a job when they're older and things like that, but they need that support just as much out of school as well. But I do feel like it's very, very focused on mainstream, getting the children into mainstream, and it's all around that, and that is a big concern as well, I think.
And there's no talk about subject specialisms in these safe, in these new SEND spaces that have now got this capital funding. It's speech therapists, it's ed psychs, but not subject specialists. And there's so much research that supports the fact that that is what actually is necessary.
No, you want your kid doing normal lessons, right? It's like
it's what takes the pressure off the teachers, and also tutors don't necessarily have to have QTS.
Yeah.
So you've also got that teacher and recruitment issue, which is that so many of us, myself included, couldn't afford to get to QTS, let alone become an EQT, because we just weren't able to go without a salary for 2 years. years or
Yeah,
whatever it might be,
exactly.
or a reduced salary, or, you know, and even with the bursaries that are in play. So there's another whole area of potential teachers that could be put into schools or be working alongside schools, and it's just not happening, and it's just not being discussed.
Yeah.
Good. Anyone want to jump in on that quickly, or we'll go to the probably last audience question? Chat behind there, yeah.
I'm Ben from the Nuffield Foundation. I'm just curious if anyone on the panel has a particular view on the experts at hand proposals, because I think quite a significant part of whether the white paper's proposal succeeds, I think, could be based on how successful that is. And I'm just curious about whether you think it's feasible, obviously, in the sort of 3 years, certainly for certain education psychologists, the amount of time it takes to train people, the shortages that exist at the moment. And if it is the case that maybe they aren't quite able to get enough to meet demand, how the gatekeeping of that service, particularly when it's for children who haven't got any HCP because it's part of the mainstream provision, like how you could visualise that actually happening in practice, because it seems that there could be some unintended consequences in a lot of difficult work for schools, almost rationing resource there. So I'm just sort of, it's quite a speculative question because I haven't got my head around it, but I'm curious if the panel has any thoughts.
Alistair, and then Chrissy will go to you for a frontline perspective.
I think it's a really important question, right? I think it's important to start from the perspective that in the bulk of this is a resource schools don't have now. So it will be even in an imperfect world where we haven't got the workforce as fully sorted as we'd like to, and I know we are running hard to ensure we can, it is still a step forward on the offer that for many schools will be available in terms of that specialist support, which has just been completely hollowed out, both by the bureaucratic nightmare that the assessment systems become, but also the burnout that far too many of those professionals who had been engaging, have been supporting young people for a very long time, felt leave the workforce. And I think that leave the workforce point is what the really important aspect of our forms. You are absolutely right. We are unlikely to be able to simply train from scratch all of the specialists that we need. I think a big part of the success of our workforce strategy will rely on those outreach to people who had got quite disillusioned with what they were tasked with doing under a very broken system, and bringing them back on board and back on side with the system, which is much more about ensuring they're spending their time in school supporting young people needs that they got into the profession in the very first place to help with. In terms of the consequences for schools, I think making sure you've got the right systems, approaches, inclusion guidance for schools to ensure that they're supported to help deploy that resource as effectively as possible, I think will be useful. That will be the case whether it's fully staffed or not quite fully staffed in 3 years' time. But every expectation I've got so far is I think the team get the importance of the workforce challenge. They are resolute in ensuring that we've got that in place when it starts, which is why we're waiting 3 years before switching on big chunks of the new system. But I absolutely recognise how fundamental it will be to ensuring that young people in mainstream settings have access to the full bandwidth of support they deserve and should be entitled to.
Just to add, I think schools will welcome any additional capacity that is thrown their way. I think in terms of, there are a number of highly qualified, highly trained people around who I think you've quite rightly picked out, Alistair, are not currently in schools. And I think they could be an incredible workforce. I think we need to value and respect them very much. And I think Ed Sykes are a really good example of that. These are people who hold doctorate qualifications, who they spend 10 years in total training to be an Ed Psych. I think we probably need to look at how much Ed Psychs are making paid, and ensuring that they feel valued. But I think we can't go away from the point of we need to really invest in teachers who are in the classrooms as well. And that's where having really effective models of professional development makes a huge difference. And the experts should be kind of additional. Do you know what I mean? It can't replace what we do in a classroom day in, day out. So another little play to the government to really value the teaching workforce, make sure that they are looked after and treated well. That's the key thing.
Thank you. And Lisa, any last comments you want to just put in before we close?
Oh gosh, no.
That's okay. Charlie, any last thought?
No, I mean, for me, I think, like's been said, none of this is going to work without an adequate workforce. And you are looking at 3 ex-teachers on a panel of 4. And I think I'm really wary of any narrative that says that we should be, having a war cry that gets people back into a public sector that likely damaged their mental health and burnt them out. So I think, yes, we absolutely should be getting people into the workforce. That is the best thing we can do for children, whether that's teachers, ed psychs, so whatever. We really need to understand why those people have left and stop asking them to put the well-being of children above themselves.
Thank you. And I think maybe last thought from me is that, as I look at this, what strikes me is a lot of this is about rebuilding trust. Rebuilding trust with kids, it's rebuilding trust with parents, and it's rebuilding trust with teachers and school leaders as part of the process. And that only if we do that, I think we'll white paper will be successful in here. So let's thank the panel, and that brings us to time. Thank you, guys. If you like, but that's the formal events closed. Thank you. Good. That was good. We got a good sparky.
Yeah, definitely.
Accountability metrics.
No, the OTASs are good. I mean, I'll say which is partly an online school. Things together for our youngest. It's been real.
I think part of the challenge, right, is because you've got this in the growth section.
Amazing.
Long?
Yeah, good. She is.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
That's amazing. And really,
The whole problem, like, it's
Good. I mean,
things a bit of a mess. Like,
to do.
I do think the team has done
Like I joined it last year.
You tell.
I know,
Knows how to
exactly.
make shit.
So much really loud.
It was an interesting experience, but out now, and it's good to have it.
But this is it. I mean, Chrissy, she's always wanted to because she has to look after her 3
Yeah, right now it's quite funny because I was very much like driving from
Lots of
who was this idiot that decided to do? Oh wait, yeah, damn it, that guy is really annoying.
But I'm a little bit of a nerd, and I kind of miss
That wouldn't have
I don't always
Only managed to do
Yeah.
Yes.
I really enjoy it.
Josh has been coming along
doesn't always show well-placed theory of change.
But I just hope that
Let's see, man. Thanks for coming.
round is my mum.
What's the rest of the day hold for you?
Quite full on, actually. So I'm catching up with the.
and I heard on the different hours.
Jude Hillary.
Oh, yeah.
To the
Day after the
Right,
white
I haven't. Listen.
No, I thought just.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, if there's anything that she help,
Drop a line. Get him on WhatsApp.
That's probably not how we know each other.
good.
Not recently.
Excellent.
funding that's
Use that money.
He was
Yeah. So our next.
Can they have confidence? Stakeholders.
and we're
2019.
Finishing off for a while. thing we received from us is mid to April polling that we did on school funding. So in the schools that will
I'm advocating.
Hope has to be if the success,
The occasional need that's there.
Provision
sort of thing. It's like annual NPR class, which is really good.
Acceptance different.
It's not
They're not able to themselves so much.
I was interested. Are you on LinkedIn?
So it's annual polling. We do it through the NFER. You can see anyway. Reasons people use nominal bar, so kind of people are doing anyway.
What's the next?
On year comparisons, because obviously the panel is different.
We've got comms and research at 11. Come on.
So that's good.
Yeah, I think.
Just did like polling school leaders for this the tab, and they are very good.
But it's not.
Almost wish there were 2 out.
It's like right to one passing.
It's like everyone, for me, I remember on something on the phone.
It's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
like over 2,200, I think.
One thing I used to be back in the day.
In secondary schools, you get a sample of what it is, but it's something. Thousands if you do like school teachers and everything, and they give you.
I mean,
Someone
For this was the piece that you tap on. Like send social media. What was it? Like for like schools send.
Oh, I already got another barrage this morning.
Serving fewer was with send. It's really good. I would really recommend them and the NFER one in that omnibus next time it comes. So we like design the questions ourselves and then like refine. It's like so for instance you can do all of this like complex analysis of stuff when you're like once you calculate then this is the thing. It's like if you can say 4% school leaders will schools like
Brilliant, that
discourage people to send as your headline.
it had enough.
Stephen, you do more learning.
By IMD. You do it by
Having done it once.
do stuff like by FSM. We have something breaks. I can't remember how. It might just be regional.
Bar stools.
Glasses.
Breaks available. You left without you did senior leaders. If you did the whole school and you got something of say 7,000 or 8,000, then you can do like between the northeast and the north. But we,
Wondering about that.
in ours it's very small, so that
There's cameras there and there, and they can.
so yeah, we did.
Should be
So you're moving towards the commission.
I belatedly thought I shouldn't be eating my croissant. Practice case was taking place, so I really apologise if I'm chewing.
No, you'll be. They won't. Otherwise, that coffee is so going off.
Yeah, it's quite noisy, yeah.
But it's.
I have just had Jessie Hewitson on the phone that I've been chasing from the Times for ages. Anyway, she's quite keen to have a chat. I have approached, so she freelances and is working for the Times, and I have approached her to do like digging into it. She's kind of bouncing ideas around. So I said that maybe you might be able to have a chat.
And then all of the culture shock.
Okay, let me think about that for a minute.
But she did that thing of calling me without really thinking what I was I was like, what is it even?
Also, it's like schools that have
Formulating
school estate,
like children in the back.
and can't like physically do that. Then it's always challenging with these best practices. It's always like how replicable
Dashboard.
and what
Yeah.
Can you mind?
doesn't work here. So it's just it's
my desk.
like that couldn't work in my mind. So it's like how do you present it in a way where those concerns are minimised, can never be eliminated. I also think so much of this stuff, what does it mean for small schools is always one, like what does it mean for tiny local schools? What I sometimes find and you like lofty aspirations and the importance of subject knowledge and subject discipline and specialist teachers. It's like in a tiny school, you've got one teacher who's across like multiple areas. And then it's like, oh, but they can collaborate in a large mat. And it's like, okay, but there are no schools within however many square miles.
Yeah.
So, 80s, we got one the other day over London.
Yeah, that
Could it be worse?
January. So
Yeah.
And you're teaching.
So that's me, it's a very old teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just still taking note at the moment.